It is, and where a guy is drafted, I should say, by what team is rarely a surprise because these players are in the months leading up to the NFL draft brought in for private workouts they may get more contact from some teams than others. It's very rare that a guy is drafted by a team that he feels surprised about it. Usually he has a pretty good idea based on the contact he's had with teams, the ones that have shown the most interest. I think most guys, if they were forced to do so the night before the draft, could probably list a 5 or 6 of the most likely teams to draft them, and most likely those would indeed be one of the teams selecting them.
Now, the incident that I think of that maybe has caused it to be so orchestrated ever since is when our dear departed friend Hugh Culverhouse, the owner of the Bucks, drafted Bo Jackson, even though Jackson said he would not come here. And have there been other cases like that since, or was that the one that said to the owners, "You damn well better know if this guy wants to come play for your team"?
Well, of course, the one that's comparable about the same era was John Elway, drafted by the Baltimore Colts, and he didn't want to go play there either, so he ended up with the Denver Broncos. We don't see this in the NFL too much because usually the teams are willing to pay. We see this more in baseball where certain teams just aren't going to pay if they have the top pick, and we see this with the agent Scott Boras, who pretty much scares some teams away from drafting his players. But in the NFL, that's rarely the case. Bo Jackson, John Elway, of course, notable exceptions to the rule, but that's not something we've really seen in recent years.
Do the college kids coming through the draft or coming up to the draft, do they have any say in their future? I always find this fascinating in a capitalist society, an open society as we tend to have, that they can't really negotiate with more than one person. They seem to have to go with whoever wants them, really.
Yeah, and that's the nature of the NFL draft. But in fairness, especially at the top of the first round, the signing bonuses are pretty outrageous. I mean, compared to even within the twisted, warped economics of professional sports. I mean, for a guy to get a signing bonus of 35 to 40 million before he's even played a down of football in the NFL is pretty ludicrous, again, even by the warped economics of the NFL. But I think what we're going to see in this next round of labor negotiations that's upon us, threatening the 2011 season, is that I think that's going to be on the table, and that the Players Association might be willing to have more of a hard cap or slotted salaries, even more so than what they have now, in exchange for some other concessions from the NFL owners.
I said that I wouldn't quiz you on the last week's draft itself, but there was one player, and I think you'll be comfortable with this. There was a guy from USF, and for the life of me, I can't think of his name right now. That's the University of South Florida for people outside of the South, who went to the Giants, very high pick, first time that school has ever sent anyone first round. Was I the only one who was surprised by that? I mean, the guy had only had one really big college season.
Right. He had been a junior college transfer. His last name is a hyphenated name, Pierre Paul. That's his last name. His first name escapes me at the moment, too. But he had played just 1 year of junior college ball and then transferred to USF. And, yeah, was thought of, as most junior college kids are, as a guy with some potential, but it's hard to really ascertain just how much. Usually guys that end up playing junior college ball do so for one of two reasons. One, they just weren't recruited at all, or more commonly, they didn't qualify academically for a Division I school. But not sure the case with Pierre Paul, but he really distinguished himself not only in his 1 year at USF, but in the pre-draft season when he went to the Combine and in his pro day, and he just had that element of pro-professional ability in terms of both his physical nature and also his skill set that really matched up well. And a guy like that, it's not unheard of for someone to do this, but it still is unusual. I mean, it's for a guy to essentially in a 1 year period go from a complete unknown to a guy picked in the first half, the first round.
I thought that was kind of odd. And then the flip side, here I go again, breaking my promise. Well, the flip side of that I thought was, and I don't follow this that closely. You know, I'm an NFL fan. I follow the Bucks a bit, not so much lately, but I like to watch football on Sundays, college football on the weekend, but on Saturdays. But Tim Tebow going to Denver was pretty much a surprise, wasn't it? I mean, personally, I was expecting the Jacksonville Jaguars would give him 20% of the team just to get him up there and sell some damn tickets.
Right, and the prognosticators on Tebow, starting from his, you name it, freshman year of college, the thought was, well, he plays in this this college system. His arm slot from which he threw the ball wasn't going to make it in the NFL. He again, as for all of his college talent, it wasn't a skill set that would mesh well. People thought of him as a fourth-round pick. In the months leading up to the NFL draft, he adjusted his arm angle, his release point. That seemed to appease a lot of teams. And a lot of them just liked the makeup of the guy above all else, his leadership qualities, his winning attitude, of course, his winning experience. And so for a team like the Denver Broncos, who, even though they have a relatively new administration, historically has always been kind of a little bit of a gutsier team when it comes to making these calls on draft day, some of which have backfired. But yeah, for a team like Denver, they like a guy like Tebow. Will he materialize? And that's a big question. I mean, the draft is always a crapshoot, especially at the quarterback position, especially a guy like Tim Tebow, who's been dissected and debated probably more so than any player of the last decade.
Now, I asked that question as a Gator myself, and very interested to see where he would go. Of course, I just really believe that he was going to go to a team that needed help selling tickets first and foremost. It'll be interesting to see how he meshes with the coach there. In Florida, he was with a coach who was, I think it's safe to say, very much like him. He was a very humanistic guy, a very down-to-earth kind of guy. Whereas, a guy like Tebow probably wouldn't have done as well with Steve Spurrier, a previous Gator coach. It might not have meshed as well.
Yeah, no question about it. But when you talk about Tebow going to Denver, even in this brutal economy we're under, which the NFL has not been immune to that. 3 years ago, the NFL was selling out 95% of its seats, and even now, there aren't that many franchises that have a lot of seats available, and the Denver Broncos are certainly not one of them. That's you talk about a rabid regional fan base that doesn't need any help selling tickets, but so they don't need Tim Tebow in that regard. That said, they've sold a lot of Tim Tebow jerseys in the last week. But yeah, to your point with Urban Meyer, no doubt there was a very good fit there, personality-wise. Not sure Tim Tebow's quite as high-strung, shall we say, as Urban Meyer, but nevertheless, when you're talking competitive fire, definitely birds of a feather.